truth is, Dean is eating potato chips behind the curtain. Just FYI. So I love what Dean said about having open minds and new ideas and learning and all that stuff. And so I'm excited that one of the very first sessions is about cryptocurrency and blockchain. Hot topic. So if the subject is super confusing to you, who's a little bit confused by it, it's okay to say, admit. Okay, you cannot be a whole group of experts. If so, that's impressive. You need to hire everybody. He'll talk about his new company, Robot Cash. And if you want to learn more, there's a great white paper that he has on his site. So Brian's one of my favorite serial entrepreneurs. He's been in the gaming industry for a really long time, known for many things, founded Interplay Games, and In Exile, Wasteland 3 is coming next year, right? Mm-hmm. So now co-founder of this new company, he can talk about progress since their announcement in January. So tell us the fun story about how you came to this idea and what it is.
Well, I very much sort of drank the Kool-Aid as it relates to the blockchain and its effect on the industry and the cryptography that it represents and the chain of ownership. And I have some friends that are very successful in the space, and they sort of challenged me to come up with something. And so I read a lot of white papers, like probably a lot of you have, and a couple things struck me. One is that the opportunity for disruption for all sorts of different industries. So I looked at our industry, thinking one of the biggest areas for disruption is digital distribution, and whether it really takes 30 points to run that model or not, beyond the fact that there's some savings from being decentralized. And the other part was chain of ownership, which is that if you could make a copy of a Bitcoin and sell it, it would be lights out tomorrow. And so if we could apply that same logic to a game, the buying and selling of a game, could we allow consumers to resell a game when they were done playing it? And especially as we're moving away from physical to the physical world into the digital world and the sense of people wanting to own something, most people don't know they don't own a game, that they only license it. And so anyway, that kind of got me down the whole thinking about, hey, we could use this technology and for the purposes of resale and offering a better opportunity for publishers and developers to make a lot more money per unit.
Didn't you wake up in 3 in the morning or something with some crazy? You couldn't wait to call Lee and tell him your idea.
I did. It was funny because it very much was one of those things where I was thinking, how do I use this? How do I use this? And I thought, well, what if we gave the publishers 95%, which everybody loves that, but what could I do beyond that? And then it's like I literally woke up that night thinking, resell, allow people to resell their game. So I called up Lee, who's our CEO now, and I was calling his phone all day long. And he finally picked up. I sounded like a madman describing this opportunity, and got him very excited and worked up into it. And so, yep, now I got him aboard.
Well, so in just simplistic terms, can you explain what blockchain is? I mean, it's really a ledger, but also your coin, your token, you're calling it iron, right?
Yeah, I mean, most of you probably understand the blockchain. It's a decentralized ledger. It's sort of unhackable security so far. And so with that in mind, like I said, tracing chain of ownership, with great authority, we could convince publishers that we could track the game and know that it would not be pirated. I mean, you can always remove copy protection, but they couldn't resell it. And I liked the fact that there are people that do not like DRM. There's the DRM-free crowd, which is GOG, for example, and then there's Steam, which is a type of GOG or a type of DRM as you lean on their API functionality. And so what I liked was it threaded the needle well that at least people that do not like DRM would have to agree that you can't allow resale and be DRM free. Those two states cannot exist. And so I thought that would be an interesting part of it in terms of merging those two together. So anyway, but that system of security is the thing that publishers would end up granting us the ability to do this. We announced several major publishers in the last week with 505 Games and Paradox and THQ Nordic, and there was, I don't know, about 8 or 9. We'll have another 20 or 30 announcing over the next couple of months.
11 so far or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
And you can imagine those first conversations with, hey, we want to allow people to resell their game when they're done playing it. And
tell us about that.
Like, hell no.
Because you announcing it in January and having 11 so far is pretty impressive. Did it take convincing? This is so brand new.
It did. I mean, it's a whole paradigm shift to allow that resell of a game. And what does it do to the long tail? And what about pricing? And there's any number of things. I think the variable that got them over the hump was that the publisher controls all the variables for how the resell gets done. And they had to control that. But I think that what will happen is that they're going to start to play with those dials. And I think that's where it gets very interesting to me, which is, I would tell them and say, well, instead of having a 50, I say, you're going to have a 50% off sale? Yeah. Do a 50% commission sale. Do a 75% commission sale. What does that mean? How will that translate? Now you've got a sales force full of people that are all trying to get their friends to buy to daily, hourly, whatever you want to do. And so that ability to change the dials, I think that's what got them interested and knew that they could protect their rights and also potentially grow the economy. You know, the idea, I mean, hey, this is one grand thought experiment in a way, right? Because this hasn't been done before. But can we grow the ecosystem? You know, now that people are selling their games, what are they going to do with the money? Hopefully they're going to go buy another game. And certainly we looked at GameStop, and they do, I think, $2 billion a year in trade-ins. It represents about half their profits. So we know people like the concept on the physical side. There's no reason why they wouldn't on the digital side. And we would hear that people would buy their games for physical because they could get something back later. So I think that, again, it has an ability to increase the size of the ecosystem for game buying.
What does this mean for Steam, for example? Like, how does someone could view it as a competitor? Are some of these companies going to do a game exclusive with you? Are they going to?
Yeah.
How's that going to go?
We'll end up being our own system. I don't claim that we're going to take out Steam. I think that's kind of a bold claim, but you can have some great success. You know, one of the companies that most people haven't heard of is called itch.io, and they're number 3 in traffic. It goes Steam, GOG, and itch. You do 6 million people a month. So you look, they've got a great ecosystem there, people. So we say, well, why? You know, we don't mean to be Netflix, but could we be Hulu? And what does that represent? And I think, and actually, most interesting part of the platform is that we're open source. I think that's one of our biggest strengths. That people are going to build things on it that we can't dream of. You know, it's like GitHub has 20 million people that go there to put up their source code. I mean, we look at Wikipedia. You know, I look at things like Machinima, which would, you know, who would have thought that making cartoons about video games would have allowed them to sell their business for about $100 million? Who would have saw that coming? And so as we do open source, they'll be building on API functionality, like what Steam has, could be saving games in the cloud, but they'll also be doing some things that again, we hadn't really dreamed of. And I think that's going to be very interesting. And because we're blockchain specific, that they'll be building some blockchain specific functionality. But we'd like to be the Steam of blockchain games, because that is something that's different and there are, I think I read there's 80 games in development. There's a show coming up in the Ukraine, and next month it's just for blockchain games. So, you know, they're going to become a thing, and we'd like to be there for it.
So what about investors? You know, all the investors putting money in VR, and I fully believe VR is going to be a long tail deal. Where does investing in this? It seems like investors are rushing to do this.
Well, raising money in the crypto world as a whole, we could do a whole, we could do an hour-long panel on that. And by the way, we've been doing it during a time which is, you know, been complete crashing of the crypto market, so our timing has been immaculate. The investment in this side of it is they invest into tokens, into the business. And the analogy I give is like a Chuck E. Cheese. Right, which is. I remember when I first sat down with these guys, I said, "Okay, if we raise money this way, how much equity do they get in the company?" They said, "None." I said, "Well, how much profit do they get?" "None." You know, and of course, I'm scratched. I can't get my head around this. And so, like I said, later it was really kind of the Chuck E. Cheese analogy, which is we're opening it up and we're going to pre-sell you the tokens for all the people coming through the door. And if a lot of people come through the door, then your tokens will have value. If no one comes through the door, then they don't. And so that's a simplistic way of describing the process for raising money for a crypto-oriented company.
Bizarre question. People on the team, are they paid? How do you pay them? Do they get paid in iron?
No, well, it turns out the supermarket won't take tokens, so they get paid in cash.
It's still the real deal. You just finished your public pre-sale, so next is the token generation event.
Right.
That's going to be the last 2 quarters of this year? And what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's about 6 months away from when we launched the site. We have a fully functioning site now, but now we need to add the content, add more API functionality. There's a whole host of features that we have to add. And then, as you described, was the token generation event happens at the same time the site goes live. You'll hear an ICO as the description. Technically speaking, we're not doing an ICO because we're not selling the tokens to the public. That's a whole other different set of rules and regulations that are being scrutinized. And so ours was just with accredited investors, so we sort of ruled that out early on. But so it's really, like you said, it's a token generation event, not an ICO technically. But anyway, that'll all happen around June, and that's when the investors, they have an agreement called the SAFT agreement, which is a security agreement, and they convert over to the tokens once we launch.
So it seems like some of the stuff that you show on the site, let's just say a company gets involved, they also can do marketing, different things, or is it that you offer that?
You mean the publishers and developers?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're trying to give them more control than they've had before. In terms of marketing on the site, there's no direct way for them to market per se. But like I said, there'll be a lot more dials and knobs for controlling any number of different things, but not to take over ads on the website or anything like that.
So I think like many things, people rush to start companies not quite like this, but in this arena. Do you think the gaming background and the background of some of the members of your team is the reason is that all required to make a successful company?
Well, I think that in our particular case, there's a lot of crypto plays that are more peer-to-peer oriented. And so there are no outside rights that are required to get. And I think that's given us an advantage. I've been in the business a long time. Lee Jacobson is, he was former president of Atari, and Philippe Irwin, who was the VP at Warner Brothers. So we're able to draw on all of our relationships to help get these rights because, there's these, last year was kind of the Wild West where two kids from Macedonia would raise $25 million in 33 seconds. And then they would go out and they would say, and once the publishers put our API in, all these great things are going to happen. Well, that's the hard part, right? I mean, getting these people to do that work. And so they sort of gloss over that. I always say, like, I could be a movie producer, Tom Cruise, to make a film with me, but he won't, and so.
How do you know?
Well, I can try. So it has helped because even these publishers who have been our friends for decades, it took us 6 months to get these contracts signed and make them understand it and allow for a resale. I mean, it's a really, really big deal that publishers are allowing their games to be resold consumer to consumer. That was a major thing to get these publishers comfortable with and over the hump. And again, once we get out there and they start to see the effects, I think it'll start to feed up on itself. But yes, the relationships have helped and the trust that we are from the business. So I think it would be difficult if you were two kids from Macedonia to get those right. Again, it took us just a long, long time just with our background.
I can only imagine the attorneys that are working on these contracts. This is like a whole new arena.
Well, at first we thought we were only going to be able to pay them in crypto, and oh my gosh, that was painful. You need to set up a wallet, and if you don't sweep your wallet, this is the currency risk, and la la la. Thankfully, we were able to work out a way that we could pay them in cash or fiat now, as they say in our world. Yeah, fortunately, that was very painful for a while. But yeah, I mean, again, this is a very unique set of issues that they haven't had to deal with before.
You've been really clear about really wanting to make sure you've got a mix of indies and bigger publishers.
Yeah. I think that, and we've signed up some of the bigger publishers, and more are coming. And one of our advisors on this is Anna Sweet. She was one of the first 4 employees of Steam or Valve, but she was part of the group that launched Steam. And we talked a lot about before there was Project Greenlight and how did they curate. I think curation. We are going to be a curated site. I think the 7,000 titles per year is not helpful for anybody. So we want to take that point on. But she talked about the way they used to work at Steam, which we liked, is they had ambassadors, which was people that were in the industry who were like talent scouts, sort of. So if these people saw a product that they liked, it's on the site. And so I like that a lot. So we're going to be tapping in, and we've already started putting our our group together of people that are very heavily ingrained in the indie industry, that are super well respected. They have a good eye for talent, product, and they're going to help us as part of that process.
This, I think I already know the answer, but will your currency work outside your company?
Well, that's a complicated question. Will it work out? Well, yes and no. I mean, so on the site, our token is the Iron token,
Right.
which we like the Game of Thrones, the Iron Bank, and so the way people earn Iron, 3 different ways. One is that if they resell a game, they can get Iron or cash, and we offer incentive to take Iron. They also we allow them to leave their system on at night, and it mines for other currency if they want. They get rewarded in Iron, and then we do something called airdrop, which is sort of really a customer acquisition tool. So we have a deal with Wax, and we'll be announcing some hardware partnerships where we give them hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tokens. They will airdrop it in the community, and then they can use and redeem those tokens for games on our site. But that all stays sort of within the site itself. It's not really set for gamers to speculate and make money on. We want it to use it as a token to track ownership and to make the site work, as opposed to have our individual users speculate.
So just speaking from strictly a business point of view, you know, I've seen you take a lot of risks. We've done some fun side stuff together. Does doing this scare you at all?
Every venture scares me. But I don't know, it's kind of fun connecting the dots and trying different things. I mean, like I said, I described it early on as an experiment. And I love trying. I don't know exactly where it's going to fall out, especially with all these moving parts and variables between open source and crypto and everything else. But, you know, if it works, you know, it'll be my favorite of the industry. I mean, we can lower the fees that we're paying and be fantastic. You know, we run the math. You know, on a 1 million unit seller, the difference, the delta is another $6 million, the bottom line, to a publisher or developer. And, you know, 30 points, I think it started off, I don't know if Steve Jobs started it or what, but, you know, I feel like we've been living with it just because we've been living with it more than anything, and I question whether it takes that much.
Right.
I mean, I know it doesn't take us that much to run the operations. So, and even with an individual developer who, let's say their product has $100,000 worth of business, well, that extra 25 grand might be the difference between them having another at-bat. So it really swings a lot. Of course, we'd love to get PUBG and, you know, put in the long shot category, but we run the math for them. It's like they would have made another $450 million. They probably wouldn't have cared, but you know, it's a big swing. You know, if we can get this to take hold, and even if we get a 10% market share, you know, that's a $400 or $500 million a year business. And again, I think I think that what'll be interesting is if people start getting used to it, and it becomes a paradigm shift, which is they're used to selling their games. And I think if it becomes a thing, then at some degree the genie is out of the bottle. Especially when I think when publishers start playing with that dial. Like I say, if they find out, hey, every time we do a 50% commission sell, all these great things happen. They get their friends to do it. More currency comes in. They use the money to buy new games. All sorts of metrics. Yeah. Right. Well, now if you can buy the same game on our site and get half your money back at any given point, well, you know, I think that starts to move the dial and change the dynamic. So that's kind of the experimentation that we're curious about.
You sort of earlier on in your career decided, I think, made a decision not to stick with sort of the corporate route and really just kind of keep starting your own companies so you can control your destiny a little more. Is that good assessment?
I'd hate to work for me. No, I'm just kidding. No. No, I've always liked doing things my own way in that regard.
Yeah, so but, like what advice do you have just in terms of how that journey's been and you know, people in the audience that work on one side or the other or at some point may begin to start their own company? I know that's like a big question, but.
What advice on starting your own company?
Just like advice about that whole journey of it. About risk, about.
Yeah, you know. I think the biggest thing is not to overanalyze. To some degree, you got to just sort of jump in and make it happen. I think some people just think too hard about it, and you just got to take that first step and go. I guess I'm willing to fail. You know, it doesn't bother me. I'm willing to give it a shot, and if I fail, I fail. It's okay. I tried something. I'll learn a whole bunch of things along the way, and it may pivot and become something that I originally hadn't planned for. But I think the matter is just doing it, really.
So when you fail, what do you tell yourself? I know that's like another big question, but.
I blame Perrin.
And she runs the other direction.
Oh,
It's just part of the deal.
I don't know. You know, I don't think about it in those terms. You know, I mean, I joke with my team that, you know, I say, look, as long as your batting average is high enough, let's not dwell on the 2 or 3. You know, if my batting average is, if I'm getting 7 out of 10 things right, I don't want to hear about the other 2 or 3. If it's inverted, I'll fire myself. You know, I mean, at that point, right? I shouldn't be running the place. So I think it's a matter of just your averages and not dwelling too much on the few.
I think that's really great advice.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Good. Thank you, Perrin.
Grab Brian.